Okay, so first item on the agenda is the call for the Siderate and intimate any apologies. Lynn.
Yep, thank you, Chair. As a reminder, members, before we begin this morning, this morning's planning committee will be recorded and will be uploaded onto the council's website for repeated viewing. In terms of the Siderate members, when your name is called, if you could unmute your microphone and confirm your attendance, please. We have an apology this morning from Councillor Roberts. Councillor Jenkins.
Yep, I'm here.
Councillor Friel. Yes, I'm here. Councillor McFadden. Councillor McFadden. Councillor Mackay. Councillor Mackay. Councillor Cook.
Yes, here one.
Councillor Maitland.
Here, Lynn.
We also have an apology this morning from Councillor Todd. Councillor Mayer.
Here.
Councillor McGee.
Here.
Councillor Crawford.
Yeah.
Councillor Bell.
Yeah.
And Councillor Filson.
Here.
In terms of officers attending the committee this morning, along with myself, we have Craig Young from Legal Services, we have Barry Douglas and Graham Mitchell from the Planning Service, and we have Claire Chalmers from Ayrshire Roads Alliance. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So now I need to call for any declarations of interest from members of the committee. Anybody? No? Okay, thank you. So,
through you, Chair, just before we go into the further, it was also just to say, David Mitchell, the head of service, Chief Governance Officer, won't be here right at the very start, but he is intending to join the committee, albeit remotely, during the course of the committee this morning.
Thank you, Craig. Okay, so we have one hearing, I believe, this morning, which so happens to be the first item on our agenda at part 3. So, Lynn, you want to take us through the hearing procedure, please? Thank you.
Yep, thank you, Chair. Members, in terms of the hearing this morning, we do have a hearing in terms of the next application. The hearing will begin with the Chief Governance Officer or his representative giving an overview of the application. The objector will then present their objection to committee. Members will then have the opportunity to ask any questions of the objector. Please note, members, that this is not an opportunity to comment on the merits or otherwise of the planning application. The applicant and all their agents will then address the committee in terms of support for the application, and again, members will have the opportunity to ask any questions on the submissions made. Again, members, please note that this is not to be taken as an opportunity to comment on the merits or otherwise of the planning application. The hearing will then close. At this stage, officers present will give clarification on any issues which have been raised during the hearing, and members will then move to determination. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Lynn. Okay then, so item 3 on the agenda then is the application for planning permission for the erection of major residential development together with associated roads, drainage and landscaping at proposed housing site C91 Burton A713 near Dalmellington, Burton, Dalmellington, East Ayrshire. And the reference number is 200390 PP. And I believe Craig is going to take us through this. Barry, you're taking us through it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'll be taking the application instead of Craig or Fiona today. Okay, so I'll just share my screen with you. Okay, so the application site is located to the northern edge of Dalmellington, adjoining Gateside Road and to the south of the site The settlement of Burnton is here to the north. To the east of the site is a former sawmill and scrapyard, and the Cummock Burn runs along the northwestern boundary of the site along here. Looking at the site at a larger scale of the existing site, they're showing the terraced row of miners' housing on Gateside Road, known as Broomnow. The site is just over 4 hectares in area and falls in gradient from the southeastern corner to the southwestern corner. So this area in here is mostly flat floodplain area, and this area is has a steeper gradient up to the road. Looking at the site layout, the application proposes the erection of 60 dwelling houses, most of which would be accessed from a new road with a junction onto Gateside Road in this location. This road would terminate in a turning area to the north corner of the site, with a potential for a further access through to an adjoining site. This road would terminate in a turning area. Dwelling houses would front directly onto Gateside Road along here, but most would be within the application site itself. Sorry. The residential development is contained in the southeastern part of the site, with open space occupying the western part. This includes a play area, footpaths, including one which would be along the line of an existing informal footpath here. A flood risk assessment report accompanied the application, and as a result of this, the residential development, including the Suds detention basin, roads and parking areas, are located outside of the 1 in 200 year flood risk area, which is marked by a dashed line. And you can see that running here. There is a kind of faint blue line which shows the line of the flood risk area. So the development avoids that area. Houses are a mix of 1.5 and 2-storey semi-detached and terraced. As already noted, the site has a steep decline from Gateside Road, which you can possibly see from the contours here. And it also shows the line of gabion baskets which are being used as retention features, along with an embankment to the rear of the gardens along these plots. This shows the proposed, just marks the sort of areas in colour codes, showing the housing areas in yellow, the adoptable roads in green, and shared private parking areas in orange, and open space area in purple. This plan breaks down the open space areas further, with a equipped play area here and recreational open space shown in blue. And this shows a landscaping plan for the site. Oh, sorry. And moving on to some sections through the site and the plots. This shows some of the sections through plots which front onto Gateside Road. So you can see the sort of this faint line, just using this as an example, shows the existing levels, and there will be some infilling to raise levels to form a flat platform for dwelling houses which front onto Gateside Road, but the houses themselves will be pretty much level with Gateside Road, which is this here, if you see where the cursor is. And you can see as well the use of gabion baskets as retaining features along this line of houses. Moving on to the various house types now. There are 6 different house types proposed, which are all in the following slides. This is a 2-storey terraced house type. All of the dwellings would use similar materials, which includes either white or champagne coloured scratch coat rendered to walls, grey coloured flat profile concrete tiles to the roof, and they use sort of slightly different colours of base course features within the houses as well. House type 2A, 2-storey, 3-bed semi-detached. 2B, which is also a 2-storey, 3-bed semi-detached, a slightly different design. And again, another 2-storey, 3-bed semi-detached, but a slightly different layout. And a house type 4, which is a 1.5-storey, 3-bed semi-detached. And this is the type of house which would front on to Gateside Road in the most part. I think there is one terrace, which may be 2-storey, but this is most of the houses which will front onto Gateside Road will be this type. And this is house type 5, which is a 2-storey, 4-bed semi-detached with a sort of flat roof dormer feature to the front. This shows where it's proposed to use different materials. So if I zoom in here, you can see the types of materials that are proposed to dwelling houses. Just provide a little bit of variety within the site in terms of materials and different surfacing materials as well. This shows views from Gateside Road and from the proposed road within the site. So the top profile here shows the view that would be or a section through Gateside Road. So you can see where it rises up here, and you have the 1.5-storey houses facing towards the road, along with this terrace here, and this is the 2-storey part of it. You can see that there is some use of underbuilding where the land raises, which is pretty much unavoidable in this type of site. And this is really just a closer view of this terrace here, which is to the left of the proposed junction. And further down, street scene 4 is a view from within the site of the proposed houses. This shows the site allocation within the local development plan. It is allocated as a housing opportunity site under 276H with an indicative capacity for 70 dwellings. This allocation notes the risk of flooding to the site, which has been addressed through the site layout, which avoids buildings and other infrastructure features being within the 1 in 200-year flood risk area. The LDP allocation also requires the submission of a transport assessment, and a design and access statement and transport statement was submitted to address this. Moving on to some photos of the site now. This is a view from Sillyhole Bridge with housing on Broomnow just to the right hand side, and proposed housing would be in this area to the left, and you can see how it's flat along this floodplain and rises up in this location which is where the housing would be located. And just panning slightly to the left, and this shows the line of the burn, Cummock Burn, in here. And again, just moving round back the way of the Sillyhole Bridge here and the Cummock Burn here. And the site does have some use as equestrian pasture at present. And panning around to the right again. And again, panning further to the right, showing the terraced housing on Broomnow. And the site to the left. Again, just to note that this area would not be developed for housing or roads. This shows the existing bus stop, which would be relocated as part of the development. The access junction would be roughly where this little polo is here, and the bus stop, I think, would be to the other side of this, just so it's out with the visibility display. And from the same location, looking back along Gateside Road. This is further east on Gateside Road, where the change in levels is evident. And looking east on Gateside Road, showing this shows the sort of eastern extent of the boundary, just marked where these hedges are here, and there is the sort of faint line of a post and wire fence. And again, panning to the left, where you can see the quite steep drop in level down, and the fence line here, which marks the boundary. And again, just panning to the left. And again, this is the sort of northern most part of the application site. And again to the left with the Cummock Burn running along this location here. And again, same sort of view, panning to the left. And looking back down Gateside Road with the housing at Broome now. And really just showing the same sort of view just to give you an idea of the site and the location. This is taken from the southwest corner of the site, shows the line of the burn and where there is an existing informal footpath running along the field edge. So just to conclude, as noted in the report, the application is recommended for approval subject to conditions and the conclusion of a Section 75 agreement. The site is allocated within the East Ayrshire Local Development Plan as a housing development site, and the proposal accords in principle with this. Issues of layout, design, placemaking, open space, access, amenity, flood risk, transport and other material considerations are all considered within report, and no unacceptable adverse issues are noted. Some points to note are that the site is being developed so as to avoid the risk of flooding from the Cummock Burn, and this is acceptable to SEPA and the Council Flood Officer. No objections have been raised from Ayrshire Roads Alliance in relation to transport matters. The development provides us for a simple cul-de-sac access with the potential to link in to adjoining site in future. There is also a good footpath provision and links within and out with the site. Open space provision meets with policy requirements in terms of quality and quantity. In terms of affordable housing, and in lieu of the provision of affordable housing within the development, an affordable housing commuted sum is to be paid, which is a preference of housing services and is noted in the SHIP. The district valuer has provided a report on the value of the commuted sum, which is a total of almost £75,000. The payment is proposed to be secured using a Section 75 agreement. In terms of privacy, in relation to the impacts on housing within the site and out with the site, these are all considered within the report starting on page 54. Although the housing fronting Gateside Road will face existing housing on Broome now, the distance between windows would be at least 18 metres. In addition, there is a public road which intervenes, and so it may be expected that the level of privacy wouldn't be so high for the front of housing as it would be to the rear. Privacy was one of the matters which was raised in objection to the application. In total, 25 representations objecting were received and 20 in support, and these are fully summarised and addressed in pages 17 to 48 of the report, including those which are not material. There are no matters raised in objections which would override the policy considerations in support of the application. In summary, the main determining factor in this case is the site allocation in the local development plan as a housing opportunity site and its compliance with policy Res 1, and as such the development will make a valuable contribution to the housing provision within Dalmelton and the Doon Valley. The design of development meets placemaking principles and other relevant LDP policies, and the development plan as a whole are complied with. Any adverse impacts have been sufficiently mitigated and no objections have been offered by consultees, subject to conditions in some cases which are attached to the report. The application is therefore recommended for approval following the conclusion of a Section 75 agreement in respect of the payment of the affordable housing commuted sum. A developer contribution of £12,780 is also required, which is to be paid up front prior to the issue of a decision notice. This is a contribution to streetscape and public realm improvements within Dalmelton Town Centre, and improvements to playing fields. Just to note that conditions are set out in pages 85 to 91 of the report. So if anybody has any questions, then feel free to ask. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. I'm not going to take questions at the moment. We'll wait until after you're summing up at the end. Thank you. I believe, well, it's obvious we have a number of objectors here, and one of them wishes to speak to us, Mr. John Collins. Mr. Collins, you want to come forward?
Yeah, just up to the top, Chair.
Mr. Collins, it's our normal practice to give objectors and the applicant 5 minutes each. Is that
That's quite all right, yes.
Fine, thank you very much. I'll try and warn you when you've got 1 minute to go. All right.
Quite all right.
Right, okay, thank you. Please go ahead.
According to this, the plans, I don't think the photographs do justice to the area that's involved. This is the fourth set of plans that have been submitted for this development. And from day one, we have objected. A number of people in the Broome House side have objected. I was born and brought up in that row. I've never lived anywhere else. And I know the field like the back of my hand. And on my fourth set of objections, I nominate a certain number of houses in the corner. The floodplain, I have here in front of me a map. Any child, 10-year-old at the school, studies geography, and they learn contours. The floodplain of 100 years, or the 200-year floodplain, represents nothing like that. I've seen that field flooded, and I noticed there was an attendance meeting or a site inspection on Wednesday, and I hope the people that were there went down into the corner of the field to the east side, because that lies underwater for 3 or 4 months of the year. I have no objections to houses being built. I have no objections to people buying houses. But I would hate to see houses being built in this area, simply because from day one, not one part of that plan had allowed for drainage in this area. People buying houses in there are going to be left in the future with a problem, because the water from the east side coming down Gateside Road runs into that corner. There is no application or submission to drain that area. And having seen the houses in Macadam Way and the problem they've had with drainage, these houses will be subjected to the same. It's the same with the roads. Yes, our Roads Alliance have no objections, but the road downside Gateside Road at this moment in time is overstretched with lorries from the wind farms and from the forestry, taking wood to Auchinleck and to Irvine, simply because these lorries are not allowed to go through the square in Dunmellington. It's the same if you look at some of the backup plans for holding back the hillside. The Gambian baskets, I don't know much about engineering, but I know that Gambian baskets don't last forever. And I know that the amount of infill that's for these houses, they will not last too long, simply because of the amount of drainage on that hillside. There's an awful lot of people have objected. There's other people have said they wanted. But these people phoned the salespeople, and everybody that made an application was allowed to say that was an application. That was somebody that wanted it. I've no doubt that the houses, when they're built, might be of a good standard. But once the contractor goes away, who becomes responsible for, i.e. the drainage, for the Suds ponds, for everything else that's there? They walk away. It becomes a responsibility of East Ayrshire or the people who own the houses. This area is not suitable for development. Planners may think so, but I think they've done a long, hard look at the wrong areas. And I would ask somebody to have a close look at the plans and see again exactly where the floodplain lies. It does not lie where the developers have marked it off. It lies further into the east. I've lived there all my days. I can remember floating out there in a tube when the river burst, and the river will burst its banks again. This area is not suitable for housing. And as I say, there are an awful lot of objectors that can't be here for various reasons. And for a fourth objection, for the fourth set of plans to again, a set of plans that were originally set out for a development at Rob Royston in Glasgow were simply stuck into the corner of this wee field in Dunmellington. The objections are there simply because the ground, one, is not suitable, and two, There are houses being built to a standard that we that stay in the row were not allowed to extend our houses to the front. These houses have been allowed to extend right out. The objections are for the people of the village and the people of the row. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Collins. Could you just stay there, please? I'm going to ask councillors if they have any questions for you for clarification at this stage. Councillor Pilson, thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Welcome, Mr. Collins. Barry, could you put the plan up again, please? That was it. Could you mark with your cursor just where the entrance to Hopes Avenue is there? That's better. To the entrance of Hopes Avenue.
It's a small opening between the two.
See the opening there between the two rows there? That is Mr. Collins' house here on the left-hand side there. Is that right, Mr. Collins? Yeah. This is a pinch point, and I think Care actually puts this in the papers.
Sorry, to make sure it's for clarification,
yes,
only, not a comment, okay?
Yep.
Clarification from Mr. Collins.
Just answer Mr. Collins. Mr. Collins will see on a daily basis how the cars queue here to actually access in and out of Hopes Avenue. Am I correct, Mr. Collins? Yes. That's fine, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Vincent. Do we have anybody else? No? No one else. Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Collins. Thank you. Next we have Mr. Scott Kennedy from the developers. Mr. Kennedy, do you want to come forward, please? Same thing, Mr. Kennedy. You've got 5 minutes. I'll try and warn you when you've got 1 minute to go. Okay?
Yeah,
Thank you. Please go ahead.
No, just we have taken on board all these concerns that Mr. Collins has put forward, and we do feel that we have addressed. It's not us that determines some of the physical repercussions on the site. We have fully engineered the site to deal with all these. Other than that, it's a great. It's going to be a great benefit to Dalmellington. Young people, affordable people, helping the schools, helping local businesses. I understand new developments. It's always a bit hard on local residents, but you know, when it's integrated and built well, we feel that it can be a very positive, you know, for the village. That's really everything.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions for Mr. Kennedy? Again, Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Mr. Kennedy. You've took on a challenging site here. Just with the topography of the land, you have to use gabion baskets, which you mentioned earlier on there.
Yeah.
Can I ask you where you're going to get the stone for the gabion baskets?
Sorry.
The stone for the gabion baskets?
Yes.
The infill. Where's the stone coming from that? Is it coming from a local quarry?
It will do, yeah. I don't. The local contractors will deal with that. I can't tell you where the specifics will come from, but.
Right, that's fine. Thank you.
Councillor Cook.
Thanks, Chair. So kind of just wondering, the comment was made by Mr. Collins regarding the lifespan of a gabion basket, and you know, the amount of infill. What's your interpretation of the lifespan of one of these baskets?
Gabion baskets typically used in road construction. They're done with the pretense of it's a steel wrapped gabion basket. It really does depend, sir. I'm not a specialist in that area. it's an engineered solution provided by Gossarts, our structural engineers, one that they feel will more than deal with the conditions of the ground. As for lifespan, I wouldn't be as technically minded to address that just to give it in a number of years, but it'll way outlay the span of any of the actual development itself.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor McGee.
Thanks, Chair. Mr. Kennedy, just a question on the open space area. Can you, and apologies if I've missed it in the papers, but can you tell me if there's any drainage plant for in there? Because that it appears to me it sits right on the low floodplain. Could you advise, please?
Yeah, no, a play park sits out with any sort of physical drained or need to be drained area. It will be a play park, yes. It is within and detailed within the area that it has been put by the design team, but in its own aspect, it is no physical attribution or requirement to be drained within any policy.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Mackay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kennedy. Now, Mr. Collins told us that this was a set of plans that had just been lifted from somewhere else. Could you make comment on that, please?
No, yeah, certainly. The houses are actually typically, yes, we have used a similar style of house. We've never built a chalet bungalow before, so it's a completely new house type. We do generally within we use Crawford Architectural, and they're a similar house that once the architect is designed, actually owns the designs. So he's free to move them where and fit in where appropriate. Now these houses don't look anything like Rob Royston. Just in terms, there was no PV in Rob Royston. There was the double fronted roofs have all changed. The actual the physical accommodation. Don't get me wrong. We're trying to get homes that are desirable and fit within the local sort of required area. So again, it's different brick, it's different windows, it's different front doors. The basis of a house is a house. I can't change that. And we do use similar house types as we, I can't comment any further on that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kennedy. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Kennedy, regarding the houses that front onto the face Broom now, these houses will need to be the rear of the houses will need to be built up, and we've seen the front elevations showing them they need to be built up. Now, we were out on a site visit, and it was mentioned in the site visit that topsoil was getting brought in. What are you going to use to build these houses up? You're not going to build it up with topsoil, surely?
No. There's a standard cut fill. The engineering documents are provided within the application. This is a standard building requirement where we will cut from one part of the site that's too high and fill to another. It's done under an engineering compaction. Listen, I've been doing this now 25 years. I am a civil engineer myself. It's the basic principles of housing and cut fill. There's nothing untoward. There's nothing new. It's an ancient practice. And I understand the Gabions is the the preferred structural engineers to cope with maybe the pressures or burden. But it's done like anything. Most things are over-engineered to a satisfactory standard. So the ground will be retained within its own right as a double measure, you might say. The Gabion baskets will be put in to alleviate any pressure that comes through. But Gabions are self-draining. Gabions also provide the best sort of natural way without, core drilling or, pumping concrete into the ground. It is a natural stone. It can be very, very effective and look very, very well when it's dressed properly and done properly, which is hopefully what we intend to do.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Councillor Poulsen.
If you come back in there, Chair, Mr Kennedy, the application was advertised as affordable houses. Can you give us a rough idea just how much the houses will be selling for?
Again, that hasn't been the current market price and the cost of materials, as you'll well know, sir. That hasn't been settled. Listen, Dalmellington does have its own natural area. We'll rely on the local estate agents to determine, where the houses will be. As for an actual sales brochure, it hasn't even been done yet because of the length of time this application has taken to get through. That will be, done at a later date. I can't physically say. Now, we did go with a district valuer. The requirement for social housing, we did ask, and it was said that they don't require it. The provision of social housing, so that wasn't by our choice, that was taken away from us. We are then paying the commuted sum in the balance of that application.
But you must have a rough idea in your head, surely.
But that's not for me to comment.
Right, okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? No? Okay, thank you. I'm going to go back to Marek. Do you want to just sum things up for us, please?
Sorry, through you, Chair. Firstly, Mr Kennedy, you're free to go back to the public gallery.
Sorry, Mr Kennedy.
No
Thank both you yourself and Mr Collins for their time this morning and for coming along to help us.
No, thank you.
Reach a decision.
Appreciate
thank you
the
both.
opportunity.
Okay, thanks, Councillor. Just in relation to some of the points made, in relation to flooding, I understand what the objector is saying. However, we do consult with Scottish Environment Protection Agency and the Ayrshire Roads Alliance flood risk officer, and their responses are within pages 12 and 13 of the report, paragraphs 26 and 30. Neither of those consultees are objecting. SEPA noting that the development would avoid the flood risk area, so they're content with the line of the flood area. Similarly, Ayrshire Roads Alliance flood officer is happy with it, and also with the surface water drainage arrangements. So that's what I would say to that. Other points made about the gabion baskets. Well, again, I mean, it's an allocated site. Obviously, the developer is avoiding the flood risk area, so the development is sort of within this eastern part of the site, which has steeper levels. So there isn't really much avoiding having to provide some sort of retention features within it. And well, again, I'm not obviously an engineer, but gabion baskets are used quite regularly within residential and other types of development as retaining structures. They're also, the levels will be raised onto Gateside Road, but they won't be, the houses will be of a similar level to the houses opposite on Room Now, or a similar level to the road. I don't think there was much more to add to that.
That's fine. Do the councillors have any questions of Mary Craig? Do you want to come in?
Sorry, through you, Chair. It may also be helpful if you maybe want to hear from Kerr Chalmers. I'm conscious, obviously, Mr Collins raised some issues in relation to the main road at Broome Now, and obviously while our position is one of no objection as set out within the committee report, I'm not sure, Chair, if members maybe want to hear a bit further from Kerr. Certainly thereafter, there's maybe one or 2 points that I would certainly want to come in on thereafter.
That sounds fine to me. Kerr, do you want to make comment, please?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Good morning. Just in terms of traffic and traffic impact, a transport statement was submitted on support of the development, which set out the predicted traffic generation for the 60 houses. And in normal practice, we look at the peak periods, and the predicted traffic generation is estimated to be 36 or 37 two-way movements in the morning peak and the afternoon peak, which is say about 18 vehicles in, 18 out in each peak period. If you expand that over the course of a day, we would probably estimate that the 60 houses could generate around 400 vehicle movements per day, which would be 200 in and 200 out. On its own, that's not a particularly significant traffic generation, but in the context of Gateside Road, it's probably quite a large increase on the volumes that we currently have on Gateside Road. Gateside Road itself, Broomnow, it's not heavily trafficked. It's, relatively speaking, it's quite lightly trafficked. But we are conscious, though, that there can be pressures on the road, as Mr. Collins noted. It is the diversion route for the construction traffic for the wind farms and the interconnector project and timber. So, certain periods it will be under more duress than normal typical periods. But overall, we were perfectly satisfied that there was no significant impact in terms of the local road network or the junctions. There's certainly no capacity issues. I do note Councillor Filson's comment about Hopes Avenue access point, which is a pinch point in and out there. And there is no footway either, just into Hopes Avenue. So, there may be occasions where traffic will have to wait for other traffic to come in or go out, but these delays over the piece will not be significant. That's our view. So, as I say, on the whole, we've got no objections to the development on traffic terms, Chair.
Thank you. And Craig, you said you had a number of things you wanted to come in and please.
Thank you, Chair. There were just essentially two things at this stage, as has been highlighted, I think, during Mary's presentation. Clearly, the site is identified within the local development plan as a housing site. The site itself has been assessed as suitable for housing through an inquiry process, and is now identified as such with a housing allocation in the current local plan. Therefore, the principle of housing at this site has been established through that local plan process. And members, in considering this application, that is essentially your baseline. It has already been assessed that the principle of the housing at this location can be identified, can be allowed, albeit you now require to consider whether the detail before you. And also having regard to that, the conditions that are also proposed. The other thing was, I think Councillor Filson had mentioned in one of his queries to the developer, to the applicant, what the indicative position was regarding affordable housing. As members will be aware, this position is set out fully within the committee report. And while initially it was anticipated that 9 affordable houses would be made available through this development going forward, you'll see that there is reference to the housing service consultation response, which was that they did not feel or consider that affordable housing was required within Domellington, and certainly not as part of this proposal going forward. That said, you'll see from the papers, discussions have taken place, and the discussions have largely centred upon a commuted financial sum to be paid to the council in lieu of that affordable housing. So the developer is proposing, as part of this application, to make a payment that would look to be secured through a Section 75 legal agreement for the money to be paid over rather than securing actually affordable housing at this location. And as I say, that's largely as a result of the position that has been adopted by the Council's housing service and will look to be captured by a Section 75 agreement if members were minded to approve the application.
Thank you, Craig. So, members, does anyone have questions for the officers? And just at the moment, can we restrict ourselves to questions for clarification, please? There will be plenty of time for comment and determination after. But for clarification to officers, Councillor Funston, I saw you first. Thank you.
Chair, is a flooding officer here? No. Fanny, could you put some photographs up for me again? Could you go to the one with the bus stop in it? And this is a question for Care. Care, that's the kind of pinch point we're talking about there coming out of Hopes Avenue. The other entrance to the new site will be just the top side of the bus stop there. So if the cars are queuing up there, there's a possibility that they'll be queuing up get into the other site as well, waiting the traffic going by. And if a lorry is coming back round the top side there from Broomdown, which is a blind corner, that lorry's going to brake quick. And I think there's a thing called a kind of air brake lag, which the lorry will move about 22 feet. There's also a kind of 30-foot response for a lorry to actually brake there. To me, do you see potential for an accident there?
Through you, Chair. As I say, we've looked at the traffic generation flows for the development. We in comparison with the existing flows on Gateside Road, and while you're right, there does have to be a bit of give and take for vehicles coming in and out of Hopes Avenue on occasion. We don't think that these conflicts are going to be significant and result in any undue queuing that should cause a road safety issue, Councillor Filson. It's not uncommon for vehicles to have to wait to make a turn on certain roads, particularly at busy times. But as I say, relatively speaking, traffic volumes are low on Gateside Road and on Hopes Avenue as well.
I looked at the Scottish Government website just to see lorry braking times basically again, and they're saying even 20 miles an hour, it stops in about 4 car spaces. 30 miles an hour, 6 car spaces, and 40 miles an hour, about 10 car spaces. I really do think that a lorry coming around that top corner there, not seeing cars queued up there, having to brake quick, it's just an accident waiting to happen. So that's the way I see it. Sorry, Claire.
And sorry, Councillor Finlayson, but that was comment.
Apologies.
Okay. Is there anybody else for question? Councillor Cook, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just picking up on a point that was made by Mr. Collins regarding the maintenance of the Suds areas and the drainage once the developer has completed the site. Could somebody just clarify who actually is responsible for the maintenance?
Any officers? Yep. Thank you. Please go ahead.
It would be Scottish Water that would be responsible for the Suds pond. The Ayrshire Roads Alliance would be responsible for the road gullies and filter drains, but Scottish Water would be responsible for the Suds pond. In terms of the maintenance of the landscaped areas, that would be through a factoring arrangement, so that would be private. Chair.
Thanks, Chair. Just to follow that up then on the apart from the factoring arrangement, which would be for the landscaping, the owners of the properties would have no responsibility for maintaining the actual Suds pond or the drainage itself.
That's correct. That's my understanding, Chair. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Gail.
Councillor Maitland.
Anyone else for clarification? Thank you. Councillor Maitland. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It's about the proposed developers' contributions of £70,000. Can somebody clarify for me that these will be spent within the area? Thank you.
Officers?
Well, through the Section 75 negotiations, this will be discussed with Housing Services, so I would imagine that they will be requiring it to be spent within the housing market area.
Craig, do you have more information? I'm sorry, Mary, that sounded like you weren't sure. You thought it would be, but
If you bear with me, I'll have a look through the report to see if I can find an answer to that.
and perhaps Craig could, while you're doing that, perhaps Craig could, from a legal point of view, or did you know how these things go?
Certainly through you, Chair. I mean, obviously, what I would say is if members are looking for that money to be within the local housing area, given that's where the particular impact is, then we can look to ensure that the monies are directed to that particular area.
Yeah, okay. I suppose this is comment as well, but it was my understanding that in other cases, developers' contributions from one area have been used in other areas in the past. My own ward is a thing in there, so that's why I'm not sure about the answers we're getting here.
Certainly, my view would be, members, if it's your view today that you're looking for the monies to be spent within that particular housing area, then as officers, that's what we would be looking to do.
Thank you, Craig. I'm not sure if that's what the councillor meant when she asked the question.
Sorry, Chair.
Yeah.
We've got a number of members.
Right. Okay then. Who's? I do see you, but we'll get you in turn. Okay.
Councillor McFadden.
Councillor McFadden.
Yes, thank you. On page 13, paragraph 31, it does say, that SEPA are now in a position to remove their objection to proposed development, but notwithstanding that, East Ayrshire Council need to undertake their responsibilities as the Flood Risk Management Authority. I just wondered, going on what Mr. Collins has said about that particular piece of the site being under a certain amount of water, for a prolonged period of time during the winter, has anyone, that would take to do with our flood risk management actually been on site at the time of year that Mr. Collins is referring to and seeing whether this is substantial or just minor, this potential surface water? And if not, considering we're at near the beginning of November now, and the site, no one's going to start doing anything with it, I would imagine, in the next few weeks. We'll be well into the winter within the next few weeks. Should some provision be made that, someone to do with the flood risk management that we are now responsible for, according to SEPA, go out and just visit the site a couple of times after periods of heavy rain and just see, whether or not anything needs to be built into the application, should it be approved, that particular bit must be drained in a more efficient manner, or whatever would be required that when the houses end up being built, what Mr. Collins refers to doesn't end up with, flooded gardens and stuff, because it's very hard to argue against a lifetime of local knowledge, especially if, as an authority, we're making a decision and no one's ever actually been there at that place at the appropriate point in time to see something that you wouldn't expect. Sorry for the long ramble, but, SEPA have passed it back to us, and I'm not sure. I think the weather conditions and the time we're going to will make it ideal for some form of inspection just to be possible to eradicate any future risks for, owners of the houses. Thank you.
Thank you. And perhaps I'm not sure whether this committee has the power to, or not, to do as you suggest, John. I mean, we can hardly direct SEPA to go and make an inspection, can we?
No.
No, we
No,
can't.
through you, Chair. No, we couldn't, I suppose, formally, enforce or require them. They are, I think, an independent body. However, I think going back to the point, that Councillor McFadden was making, and Kerr can obviously come in this and provide further clarity. But as you will see from the papers, members, obviously, ARA have provided a response, including a response from the flooding section in relation to this application. So, I would expect that as part of that, there is a baseline which would include a knowledge or an understanding of that particular site, and also attending that site before the response went in. The response from ARA, you'll see, starts at paragraph 15 and page 7 and goes through the report certainly until page 13, paragraph 29, and you'll see from the terms of the report that clearly ARA are not objecting to the current proposals as set out within the report. You'll also see there in particular at paragraph 26 that the ARA flooding officer has indicated that from a flooding perspective, he or they have certainly no objection to the application from a flooding perspective.
Could I just ask that?
Okay, please.
Could I just ask a follow-up? Has anyone actually been there on site at the time of year Mr. Collins is talking about? I mean, because paragraph 31, it wouldn't be SEPA we're calling back out. I mean, SEPA is referring it to us as the flooding management authority. They're passing the responsibility back to us if you go with the wording in paragraph 31. So has anyone from ARA been there at the height of the winter and seen the area Mr. Collins is talking about at that time of the year? I mean, because if we were out during the summer or spring doing preparation work, which would be perfectly all right, then we won't have seen it mid-December or mid-January when I was just very worried about the fact that, Mr. Collins is pointing out that, it's underwater for such a prolonged period of time in the winter. That, can we have something written in that prior to the work starting, maybe mid-December or something, or whatever, we can go out as the management authority and just double check that there's some sort of unique set of circumstances where it does end up flooded. That's me finished. I won't go on anymore.
Thank you, Councillor McFadden. I'm going to ask Craig to comment first, and then I'm going to go to Kerr. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think what we also need to come back to, members, here is, as I say, this is an allocated housing site within the local development plan. The principle of housing has already been established for this site by that very nature. That's the first point. The second point, members, clearly is that what you are also hearing is that in terms of these proposals, and we've seen the drawing, is that the proposed housing is going to be built out with the floodplain around the outside edge of the site. So I understand what members are saying, and I'll bring Kerr in a minute so that he can perhaps clarify matters further. But essentially what we are talking about is the housing element of this proposal is going to be built out with the floodplain around the edges. So to that extent, and I think it's for that reason, we're seeing, as you'll have seen from the papers, that ARA, the flooding section, have no objection to the proposal as it stands, and SEPA as well, albeit referring back to the council, are clearly saying that they have no objection on flooding grounds to the proposed application. But as I say, I'll bring Kerr, through you, Chair, I would ask maybe Kerr, it might be useful for members to hear from him.
Please go ahead, Kerr.
Thanks, Chair. I'm not sure I can offer too much in addition to what Craig has just said, and I can't really comment on what observations our flooding officer has made in consideration of the application. I mean, all I would say is, that our flood risk assessment has been submitted, which has been undertaken by a specialist hydrological engineer, and that has been considered by our flooding officer, and he's obviously satisfied with the recommendations and content of that, and has no objections. So I can't really add much more than that, Chair, I'm afraid.
Okay, thank you both. Anyone else?
Yep, Councillor Bell.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Chair. I was actually going to ask a question, Chair, regarding the road, but after Craig mentioned that, I won't, because I would be commenting, and I've not comment. The question for Chair is, can you confirm that Gateside Road is in the Scottish timber, is earmarked for timber transport? And also, we've had discussions in the past regarding haulage to wind farms. It all has to go up Gateside Road. Thank you.
Chair, yes, Councillor Bell's correct. It is one of the consultation routes for timber transport. So it's an approved route in that regard, and it has been, and in all likelihood will continue to be a route for construction vehicles for the ongoing wind farm operations. We understand it's also going to be used for the decommissioning of the works for the interconnector project as well, and there will be heavy goods vehicle movements associated with that. They will be subject to their programmes and traffic management plans as well, but they'll be short life duration in some respects, albeit over a period of months. So yes, it is subject to more than just the usual Dunmellington residential traffic. It is subject to occasional HGV use and timber transport use. But as I say, we've undertaken there's a transport statement been undertaken, and we're content that the underlying base traffic flows will not, coupled with the generated traffic, will not cause any undue traffic or road safety issues on the road. Chair.
Thank you. I have Councillor Cook next.
Thanks, Chair. I'm just going back to the point that was raised earlier about developer contribution. Just seeking clarity. I think there's two aspects. There's developer contribution, and there's also, I suppose, a fund of money to go back into housing, and because they're not actually doing affordable housing. Am I correct on that? There's two separate amounts of money going to be paid to the council.
Harry?
Yes, that's correct. A community sum which is for affordable housing contribution, which is roughly £75,000, and also a developer contribution, which is in respect of streetscape and public realm improvements within the town centre and improvements to playing fields, including access improvements, and that amount is £12,780.
Chair, just come back on that then.
Yes, please go ahead.
So from what's been said, the actual developer contribution part of it is allocated to Dunmellington, and it's the housing part of it that we're not just clear on at present.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Cook, for teasing that one out for us. Thank you.
Councillor McGee and then Councillor Wilson, Chair.
Councillor McGee and then Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going back to my original point. I need some clarity on, is the open space part of the application? And as it sits in floodplain, according to my view, who's responsible for standards and maintenance of that? Thanks.
Officers, Care?
Okay, through you, Chair, I can't really offer anything further in terms of the floodplain that hasn't already been said. Just in terms of general floodplain, well, the landowners that's their land and it's their responsibility. I can't really say much more than that, Chair.
Mary.
My understanding is that the open space area, with the exception of the Suds area, would be owned jointly by the residents, but a factored arrangement for the maintenance of it. If that answers the question.
Kind of answers it. Just to please me. I think if the applicant's putting in an open space area, then it should be a minimum standard, and I'm very concerned that this ends up a mud hole for that kids can't access, but that's for the future. Thanks.
I think Craig wants to come in as well.
Sorry, through you, Chair, I think Barry was going to come back on the issue of the landscaping. As members will see, and Barry can clarify in any event, there are proposed landscaping conditions there for the open space areas to be landscaped through agreement by condition. The agreement would be with the planning authority, and for those open spaces thereafter to be maintained in terms of the landscaping proposal that will be agreed by the council in terms of those proposed conditions that members will see at the back of the report. We clearly have, so that should allow the maintenance of the open space area in general terms, where we're talking about, which would be the floodplain, to be managed and maintained to an appropriate way, and it would be done through planning condition. In terms of then where we've got to, I think in terms of the ownership, Councillor McGee, as I understand it, Kerr has clarified that the Suds, the Suds pond, or the Suds basin within this open space area would be adopted and managed and maintained by Scottish Water. The other area that constitutes the open space area, if I can call it that rather than the floodplain, will then be basically shared through the title arrangements with the owners within the development, and that it's proposed that there would be a factoring arrangement put in place to ensure that that maintenance scheme is then maintained. That, as I say, would be dealt with in terms of the standard and quality of the maintenance would largely be dependent upon the agreed landscaping scheme that would require to come forward by the developer to be agreed by the council's planning authority in terms of the conditions that are, as I understand it, are proposed at the end of the committee report. So to answer your question, there will be a maintenance obligation there, and it will largely be determined by the landscaping scheme that will require to be agreed by the planning service ultimately on behalf of the council. I hope that helps.
Yes, that helps, Craig. Thanks.
Thank you both. Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Chair. I've got to say I'm really disappointed that the ARA's flooding officer's not here today because of the type of application it is, and it is in flood risk. So I think I've missed an opportunity there to actually ask the expert. If I could ask you to put another photograph up, please. I want to ask a question to Kerr. The Solihull Bridge, please. I think there's another one, I think there's another one back by there. Just that one, yep. Yeah, that's the road out to Burton, Kerr, as you'll know, the C91. You've heard in the past, you know in the past that has actually flooded quite badly there. Am I correct in saying that? You know of that?
I'm not aware of that.
Well, I'm quite surprised at that. Locally, we know every year basically, because the water can't get away into the coming from Bunton, that road actually floods there. That's how high the water comes up. Folk don't realise just, and that's what it's been good to speak to the expert today. That's how bad it is. You can see how high that bridge is there. The water just comes to the bridge there basically because there's a wee hump there. That floods all the way back there. What you've got there to the right there, you're heading along Gateside Road to, and the coming up Burn runs to the River Doon, out the B741 to Straighton. You've actually got poles in the road, so as when it does flood, you can still see where the road is. That's how bad it is here. You've got to realise all that water coming out of Loch Doon to the River Doon. This is all running into that, and if it can't get away, it's backing up. And where's it going to go? Into that field.
Okay, let's just hang on there. I want to take 2 minutes. I just want to take some advice. Okay, just give me 2 minutes. Okay, folks, let me explain what that was about. I just wanted some advice about the information that we have in front of us in light of Councillor Wilson's comments. Craig wants to come in. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And I appreciate, obviously, you know, that there may be some concerns, particularly that have been referred to here by not only Mr Collins as the objector that's come forward today, but also in terms of some of the questioning by some of the members of the committee. But as I say, what I would say to you would be fundamentally, we have a report before you which sets out a position for this application. Fundamentally, the baseline is that the principle of housing here, as I've said before, has been established because it is an allocated site within the local development plan, and that process by which that has come and formed part of this local development plan also involves the appointment of a reporter appointed by Scottish ministers. So at that stage, they are looking in general terms at the site and whether it is capable of supporting housing at this location, which clearly they have done because it's now part of the local development plan. You'll also see, members, that this site has been identified for indicatively 70 houses. Now, it's not been saying that, you know, that it would cover the whole site, but indicatively, this site has been identified for housing up to 70. That's not what we've got before us today, members. We've clearly got an application for 60. So the application, members, for 60 houses is less than what a reporter indicated may be capable of being supported at this site. Clearly, when the reporter was considering this reporter didn't have the detail of a housing application before him that you now do. This application has clearly been through the planning process and has been consulted upon not only by statutory consultees but also members of the public. We clearly have here a situation where not only SEPA but also ARA's flooding section have clearly said that they have no objections to this proposal before you. And as a consequence, that is fully set out within the body of this report that is before you today. There are other proposals you've also heard in terms of road traffic matters. ARA are clearly saying that while there may be other traffic that uses this area, given the number of houses and given the estimated or indicative trips that may generate, that from their perspective they have no objection to this proposed application on road traffic grounds. Notwithstanding that, members, you know, it's for you to decide whether or not, based upon not only what you've read in this committee report, but also what you've heard today from officers and also from the members of the public and the applicant, whether or not you feel that you can support support the recommendation or whether or not you feel that there has to be a contrary recommendation or contrary decision that comes before it. As officers, we will always look to give you the best advice possible that we can, and clearly what we are presenting to you is that yes, this site may have its challenges and will have its challenges, but at the end of the day, it has been through a process by which we feel that as officers, the application here can be supported, not only in terms of its planning merits, but in terms of the issues, in terms of the traffic that may be generated, in terms of the floodplain, and also how that is managed going forward. Therefore, members, I think I appreciate members may have further questions that they may want to bring forward, but I do wonder, members, whether we're maybe now at the point where we're looking to move forward to consider a determination. But obviously, I will be guided by yourselves in that going forward. But clearly, there is, in my opinion, sufficient information before you, given what has been placed in the report and what you've clearly heard from officers, to make a decision on this application. And I wonder, members, if we're now at that point where we're moving to the next stage in terms of determination.
I was going to say, was that a hint, Craig, that I should move on, but I think it was a bit more than that. Does anybody else have questions for clarification before we move on?
Yeah, Chair, we have Councillor McFadden and Councillor Cook, but we also have David Mitchell who's asked.
Okay, we'll take the three in that order, and then folks, I think I'm going to call a halt there and move, as Craig says, to some kind of determination, because we have given this one a good thorough seeing to. Yeah. So who was first? Sorry.
David Mitchell, Chair.
David Mitchell was first. David, do you want to come in, please?
Yeah, apologies, Chair and members, in terms of dropping in and out of this meeting. It wasn't my initial intention, but unfortunately there are other matters of business beyond planning that I need to be dealing with on behalf of the council this morning. It was just to reinforce Craig's last comment, given the paper in front of you, and as indeed all items on the agenda today are in my name, to fully support Craig's assessment and advice to the panel, because if we didn't believe there was enough information in the paper, obviously we wouldn't have issued it. So it was just to reinforce Craig's comment that whatever members' view of it is obviously members' view, but we do believe there's enough information there that would allow the committee to take that decision today. So it was just to support Craig's comments, given the reports in my name. Thanks, Chair, members.
Okay, we have Councillor McFadden, Councillor Cook and Councillor McGee, and thereafter I'm moving on. So please, Councillor McFadden.
Okay, notwithstanding, everything that's been said and what Craig said, I fully accept, everything that's in the report, and I accept how it was compiled, and I'm absolutely sure it was all done with due diligence and, with the best of all intentions. And I accept the fact that the site is, there for housing. I've got no issue with that at all. It's just at this late stage in the game, we had information that came in from Mr. Collins, which, I wasn't aware of the possible flooding that may take place in that site. And I, just have to take that as local knowledge, and, I can't substantiate it. But when it comes
Councillor McFadden, is this a question for clarification, or is it comment? Because we haven't opened up for comments yet. So can I have a question, please?
It's definitely a question. I just have to frame the question. The thing is, though, when it comes to the local knowledge of a fellow local councillor whose opinions and definite local knowledge I must trust as he's talking in an open public forum, my question to you is, how do I now ignore the fact or the facts that Councillor Finlayson has put forward, and I accept them as facts, that this floods so badly, there's poles to guide you on the road, this area of the field floods badly and all the rest of it. And I accept that knowledge was not available to the people compiling the report. And it's not an omission or an oversight, it just simply wasn't there. But now Councillor Finlayson has interjected something I have to take as a fact. How do I ignore the fact and simply deal with the information provided with in the report for me to make the decision and not take into consideration Councillor Finlayson's facts. How do I do that? Because I accept what Councillor Finlayson says as a fact that has now come to light at the last minute. But notwithstanding that, I accept that as factual. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor McPadden. Craig wants in, but I'll just come in before that. I think this matter is up to Councillor Wilson to make a motion, and then for everybody to vote on it, if he wishes to do so, and as a seconder, and for everybody to vote on it as per their conscience and what they think. I don't think you are being asked to ignore what's being said. I think we're being asked to take everything into consideration, including local knowledge and including the matters that are in the papers. Craig, do you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. Members, no one's suggesting that there isn't a floodplain issue at this location, and it may assist. I think that, as I said earlier, what is being proposed here is the houses are actually proposed to be constructed out with the floodplain, and that is not only fully set out within the report, but I understand that may have also been clarified earlier. If it helps members, I've asked Vary to put up the plan that actually showed part of our initial presentation. There is a blue light, a blue kind of not dotted line as such, but there is a kind of a blue line that you will see that Vary will highlight with a cursor there, that clearly identifies the extent of the floodplain. As you'll see there. So as a consequence of that, you will see that the proposed road layout and the houses don't impinge on or enter what would be the floodplain area. So I just wanted to kind of make that clarification for members. We know, and the developer knows, that there are constraints with this site, and they've sought to try and mitigate the effects of that by moving the houses out of the floodplain. And I just thought that plan may clarify that for members. That's what we understand to be the extent of, effectively to the left of that blue line is the floodplain. To the right where the houses are is out with. And that has been fully taken account as part of this proposal. But I think, as David has also mentioned, recognise that ultimately it will be for the members to decide whether they feel that the recommendation can be supported. But it was just to reinforce the fact that as officers, we have taken account of all the relevant information in bringing this paper before you today to address a number of matters. And as ever, we will continue to give you our best advice on that paper and on this application. So I hope that now helps clarify, given it was part of Vary's earlier presentation. The houses are being built out with the floodplain.
Okay, Craig, thank you. I think you've made that point a number of times now. I'll have Councillor Cook and then Councillor McGee, and then that's it. I'm going to move to determination. Councillor Cook, thank you.
Thanks, Chair, and it's nothing to do with flooding. It's a question for Kerr in relation to the traffic management plan for the construction. Two things. Will that include conditions regarding or information regarding the importation of stone for the gabions? I know the quarries it will be coming from will have their own plans, but are we going to include that in the traffic plan for this site? And also, in terms of construction traffic, will the plan insist that all construction traffic is retained within the south site boundary? Because obviously there are constraints on that road if construction traffic started to park on it.
Thanks, Councillor Cook. Yes, there's a condition. It would be a condition of consent that a construction traffic management plan is put in place, and both those elements would form part of the plan. All construction site traffic will need to be take place within the site, you know, not on Gateside Road or any other public roads, so that the construction traffic would need to be accommodated within the site during the construction phase. And there will be agreed routes as part of the construction traffic management plan in terms of delivery routes for HGV traffic as well. So we do anticipate that the construction traffic will come in from the A713 up Gateside Road to the site rather than coming through the town centre and down from the High Main Street side, if you like. Thanks, Chair.
Is that okay, Councillor Cook?
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's reassuring to know that that's included.
Thank you. Councillor McGee.
Thanks, Chair. I'll keep it brief if I can. On a similar line, although not construction traffic, but is there any consideration being given to traffic management on a permanent basis in Gateside Road? I think there's a number of squeeze areas that could do with some help if that can be considered. Thank you.
Thanks, through you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, that's something that we did consider as part of our consideration of this application. I am aware of speed concerns on Gateside Road, particularly a little bit further up where the open space is on one side, and I have been in discussions with Councillor Filson about that, and we've actually just about to install a couple of vehicle activated speed warning signs on the road as well, to try and reduce to remind drivers to there is a 30 mph zone. We don't think that installing physical traffic calming is the right approach when the road is still subject to HGV traffic, because we feel that will actually make potential issues worse in terms of noise and vibration and braking, etc. So it would be a case of speed management and liaison with Police Scotland in terms of enforcement if there's any speeding issues. Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gay, is that okay?
I'm a bit happier, Chair, I must say, but I mean, things like flood warning and squeeze points identified as and a speed reduction and go hand in hand for me. So other additives would help. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, folks, now's the time to move on to some kind of determination and comment. So, does anybody like to start us off? Do we have anybody?
Councillor Mackay and Councillor Bell, Chair.
Councillor Mackay and then Councillor Bell.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jenkins. I was able to be on the site visit this week. It is an area that I know, but given the length of time since I was last on it, I wanted to refresh myself of it today. And again, the pictures again this morning, I consider are accurate and helpful, and I am happy to move the recommendation from the paper.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Crawford, thank you. Is anyone otherwise minded? Councillor Pilson.
Thanks, Chair. One of the Scottish Government placemaking policy values is safety, so I've got to actually refuse the application on road safety grounds and public safety because of the pinch points at the entrance to the sites.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a seconder?
I'll
Can we ask for a second?
I want to finish off what's...
Oh.
That was, Chair.
Councillor Bell.
I was just going to say I would second Councillor Thompson on that.
Okay, then,
I had a comment to make as well, but I'll hold it that just now.
Well, we'll allow time for that. Sorry.
It was just to finish off, Chair. I had the same concerns. I know the place well too, and there was water there when we visited it. But after the points was pointed out, it was out with the site. The other safety concerns was there, no problem in seconding it.
Thank you for that. Okay, so we have a proposal and proposal. Lynn, keep me right here.
Yep, thank you, Chair. Members, before we move to the vote, which will be taken by roll call, I'll just confirm that we have a motion by Councillor Mackay to approve the recommendations as per the report, and that was seconded by Councillor Crawford. We have an amendment by Councillor Filson, seconded by Councillor Bell, to refuse the application on road safety and public safety grounds. Thank you, Chair. Members, in terms of calling the vote, it will be by roll call. When your name is called, if you could confirm it's for the motion or for the amendment. And for clarity, the motion is to approve and the amendment is to refuse. Councillor Jenkins.
Approve.
Motion.
Sorry, motion.
Councillor Friel. Councillor McFadden.
Amendment.
Councillor Mackay.
Motion.
Councillor Cook.
Motion.
Councillor Maitland.
Motion.
Councillor Mayer.
Motion.
Councillor McGee.
Sorry, amendment.
Councillor Crawford.
Motion.
Councillor Bell.
Amendment.
Councillor Filson.
Amendment.
To confirm, members, the motion has been carried by 6 votes to 5 and the application has been approved as per the recommendation of the papers and for the conditions detailed within the report. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks everyone. We were at that for an hour and a half. I'm just wondering, should we have a 5-minute comfort break before we move on? Okay, thank you very much. There are no more hearings, so if members of the public or the applicant or the objector wish to leave, that's fine.
Apologies, Chair. Apologies, members.
Okay, these things happen. I'm sure you're all very busy. Right, so let's get started then. We have item number 4 on our agenda, the planning application number 21/0487/PP, proposed dwelling house and detached garage at plot adjacent to number 57 Montgomery Drive, Stewarton, KA33AP, and it's pages 100 to 128 in your papers. And Graham is going to take us through this. Thank you, Graham.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, councillors and everyone in attendance. The purpose of this report is to present for determination an application for planning permission which requires to be considered by the Planning Committee under the Council's scheme of delegation, as it has been subject to more than 10 objections from separate persons, organisations or third parties. Notwithstanding, this is a local development. The application site is located on a vacant plot of land at the southwestern end of Montgomery Drive in the Laneshaw estate in Stewarton, as shown in the map there. Got my cursor just down here at the very southwestern corner. The site would be located on one of 2 remaining vacant plots within the estate. And this is the location plan of the current application site in a bit more detail. The proposal is for the erection of a single-storey detached dwelling house and detached garage, and you can see from the proposed elevations of the dwelling house, along with the floor plans on the slide there. The plans indicate the roof finish would use slate, and the walls would be rendered with reconstituted stone coins and UPVC window frames. Access would be taken off the turning head at the western end of Montgomery Drive. There is an existing consent for a dwelling house on this site which has not been developed to date, so the principle of a dwelling house on this site has already previously been established and as acceptable. As shown in this slide, the application site falls within the Stewarton settlement boundary as defined within East Ayrshire Local Development Plan 2017. There now follows a number of slides with photographs taken by the case officer of the site and the surrounds. So that's just looking to the south in a southerly direction into the plot itself. And again, just another view in the western corner. And another view. Now that's looking towards the southwestern corner of the plot. That's looking towards the southeastern corner of the plot, and you can see the neighbouring property next to it. And again, the plot. And that's just a boundary wall that's in place at the moment. That's the property on the other side, on the northern side of Montgomery Drive. And that's looking to the south of the site, to the Scottish Water Treatment Works infrastructure. And then this is looking from roughly the access of the plot, looking in an eastwards direction back towards Montgomery Drive. You can see again, that's just the house, which would be located to the right-hand side of the plot. And that's on Montgomery Drive, looking down to the south into the plot. These are properties which are located along Montgomery Drive, and these show 1.5 storey terraced properties, and similarly a 1.5 storey detached property, which are located along Montgomery Drive as well. Turning back to the report now and looking at the consultation responses, members will note, starting at paragraph 6 of the report, that there are no objections from the consultees. Members might note the comments from Scottish Water regarding the location of the wastewater treatment works nearby, and note that we have consulted Environmental Health, who have no objections to the proposed development. It is also noted in this regard that the proposed dwelling house would be located in an area with existing residential properties throughout, some of which also border the wastewater treatment works to their rears. We have received objections to the application, which are summarised in the report, but in brief, the primary issues raised by the 11 objections relate to, in terms of the representees, lack of a uniformity and consistency of the built form, as the dwelling house is not in keeping with the established character and amenity of the surrounding residential estate, which comprises 2-storey properties, thus undermining the design ethos of the estate, and concerns with regards to the lack of objection from the local community council. Sections 25 and 37, Part 2 of the Town and Country Planning Scotland Act 1997, as amended, require that planning applications be determined in accordance with the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. The development plan comprises the adopted East Ayrshire Local Development Plan 2017 and the Minerals Local Development Plan 2020. For the purposes of this application, the relevant policies are contained within the adopted East Ayrshire Local Development Plan. In this instance, and as indicated in the report, it is considered that the relevant policies of the East Ayrshire Local Development Plan 2017 are complied with. As indicated in the report, there are material considerations relevant to this application, and it is considered on balance that these are supportive in terms of the planning history and with regards to Scottish planning policy, and on balance these are of sufficient weight which would suggest support for the application. Whilst letters of objection are noted, these are not considered to be of sufficient weight as to warrant refusal of the application. For those reasons, and for the reasons set out in the report, it is recommended that the application for planning permission be approved, subject to the conditions attached in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. Does anyone have questions for clarification at this point? I have one. And I think I know the answer, but I'll check. Paragraph 10. They mention that there may be environmental impact from odour nuisance. Just going on local knowledge here, I have experienced the odour that can sometimes be there. Is that actually a planning consideration? I suppose, I don't know, I think I'm asking Craig.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, as a matter in terms of this, the report itself makes reference to these very points. As far as we are concerned, the issues have been considered through the relevant policies of the report. And at the end of the day, what this comes down to the fact would be that I think it's been suggested that there would be an advisory note that is attached to any decision in the event that members would be looking, in the event that they were minded to grant this application, about the fact that it is adjacent to the water treatment works. But essentially, it's it would be for anyone potentially buying it in the event that it were granted to consider. It's almost like the buyer beware it be for them to take that on board, and there is a consideration. I think it's been suggested that it be an advisory note that would be attached.
I suppose maybe I was trying to be more specific. Would it be grounds for a refusal? Would it be planning grounds for a refusal or not?
No.
No, it wouldn't. Right. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Councillor Cook, Chair.
Councillor Cook.
Thanks, Chair. It was a similar question, actually. I'm just wondering if the occupier, owner, whoever of that property then objected to the smell, would Scottish Water then have to take action, or because we put the kind of buyer beware in, would that mean that you effectively have to deliver it as long as it complied with the SEPA regulations? What I'm saying is you couldn't usually use that as a reason to then have a go at Scottish Water.
No, essentially it would be different, I think, if it was flipped. In terms of if somebody was living in the house and then it was proposed to have a water treatment works constructed next to it, then that may by itself be a ground. But here we've got a situation where the water treatment works are already there. Yes, notwithstanding that, it may be that the Environmental Health Service would maybe need to consider it, but the baseline is there's a water treatment works there already. So they would look at it perhaps in terms of their legislative framework, but essentially we would require to take account of the very fact, that it's already there.
Thank you. Graham, would you like to come in, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Cook. Just to add to what Craig has said, obviously there are already existing residential properties which back onto the treatment works. So there's obviously established and existing residential uses adjacent to this site. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Councillor Mayor, thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Could I refer to page 101, paragraph 4, basically the last sentence of the paragraph, which says that the dwelling is proposed to be finished with natural slate roof, rendered walls, reconstituted groins, UPVC windows, etc. Does that in line with the rest of the houses? Because from what I could see, they were all, I don't think they had slate roofs, for example. I think they had tiled roofs. Would it be possible that if the house was made to resemble the rest of the houses, that would allay the fears of the objectors? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Graham?
Yeah. Sorry. Yes, thank you, Councillor. Yes, as far as I'm aware, the finishes or the indicative finishes set out in the application are designed to replicate and to mirror what other designs are within the other properties that are there. There is a condition requiring that the final details and the final finishes of the property are subject to approval by the planning authority in due course, should the application be approved and carried forward. So the planning authority would obviously have the opportunity to approve the very final details of anything that is going to be proposed in terms of finishing materials, so we can ensure that whatever we approve is in line with the existing finishes of the other properties throughout the estate.
Okay, thank you.
That's fine, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, then in that case, we can move to determination. Do we have a proposal? Councillor Friel? Councillor Friel proposes approval. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Pinson?
Councillor Filson?
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. Does anyone otherwise minded? No? Okay, in that case, Lynn?
Thank you, Chair. The decision of the committee is that the application has been approved, subject to the conditions and for the reasons detailed in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so next we move to agenda item number 5, planning application number 210181 AMCPP, application for approval of matters specified in conditions in relation to condition 8A, financial guarantee of planning consent number 170536 PP at lands of Low Whole House Farm, Auchinloch, Galston, East Ayrshire. And sorry for my pronunciation, it's about to be wrong. Graham, I think you're going to take us through this as well and maybe correct my pronunciation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, again, good morning again, everyone. This is an application for approval of matters specified in conditions relating to condition 8A of planning consent 170536 PP, which was for a single wind turbine in retrospect on lands of Low Whole House Farm, Auchincloy, originally consented on the 27th of July 2021. Under the Council scheme of delegation, committee approval is required by a condition.
Okay.
Yeah. Committee approval is required.
We just make sure our mics are off, folks. Thank you.
The committee.
I'm sorry.
No, thank you. The committee's approval is required by a condition imposed on the grant of planning permission to discharge conditions relative to the requirement for a financial guarantee to be provided to secure the decommissioning, restoration and aftercare of the development. At the time of assessing the retrospective application for the wind turbine, the planning service consulted with the council's consultants, Ironside Farrer, who advised us in respect of the costs required to undertake decommissioning and restoration and aftercare on the site. The planning service required a financial guarantee quantum of £46,502 for the wind turbine development to ensure the site could be restored should the operator fail to do so. Through the process of negotiating the Section 75 legal agreement, the applicant eventually accepted the council's position in respect of the financial guarantee quantum and agreed the figure of £46,502. They also advised they would provide the monies to the council via an escrow account, so the money would be provided in full directly to the council. Upon completion of the Section 75 legal agreement, the council formally issued retrospective consent for the wind turbine on the 27th of July 2021, which included a number of conditions, including condition 8A, which required a financial guarantee in favour of and in terms acceptable to the planning authority to be put in place by the wind turbine operator as security against any failure by them to perform the necessary decommissioning and restoration. The use of an escrow account is low risk to the council, and the monies have been deposited by the operator in an account in the name of the council. So the council currently now has the financial guarantee in place for the amount that we require. In line with the requirements of the legal agreement and other parts of condition 8, the financial guarantee shall be reviewed every 5 years. However, in terms of condition 8, part A, the financial guarantee is acceptable in terms of the council's supplementary guidance on financial guarantees and the Cabinet report of the 21st of May 2014 on decommissioning, restoration, aftercare and mitigation financial guarantees. Monies have been submitted to the council for the agreed quantum value, and these are currently held in a council account. Therefore, for the reasons set out in the report, it is recommended that the application be approved. Thank you.
Okay, folks, do we have any questions for Graham for clarification? No? Okay, we have a recommendation in front of us. It's recommended that we approve Part A of Condition 8 for the reasons set out in Appendix 1 of this report.
Chair,
I'll second. Does anybody otherwise minded? No? Okay then, thank you, Lynn.
Thank you, Chair. The decision of the committee is that it has been agreed to approve Part A of Condition 8 for the reasons detailed within the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Lynn. So on to agenda item number 6, which is a compliance monitoring update for major environmental developments in East Ayrshire. And here we're asked to note the report. And Mary, I believe you're going to take us through this.
Yes, Chair, thank you. Yes, I'll just share my screen with you again. Okay, this report asks for members to note the compliance monitoring activity of major environmental projects which have taken place in the period beginning of July to the end of September 2021. There is one correction to make to the report, which is the second bullet point of the recommendation at paragraph 2. This notes the technical working groups and CLC and visits undertaken in the period of April to end of June 2021. This should read July to end of September 2021. Moving on, appendices 1 to 8 provide progress details on each of the projects which are ongoing, and paragraphs 7 to 25 note some of the main points from these appendices. In terms of open cast coal sites, Greenburn and House of Water restoration continues. Paragraph 8 notes that ARA repair works are anticipated to be undertaken to the Cumnock to Dallegals Road this month. It is now anticipated that these works will take place this weekend, 23rd to 24th of October, which will allow the road to be fully reopened thereafter. Safety works at Chalmerston open cast site have been completed, and an interim closure report will be presented to the Planning Committee in due course. Similarly, restoration works at Garland and Grieve Hill have been completed, and a closure report will also be presented for this site. Works have been progressing at South Kyle Wind Farm, with the civils phase of the construction nearing an end in anticipation of the delivery of turbines, which is programmed for October 2022. Work has generally been compliant, with areas of good practice noted. Works to remedy a non-compliant culvert have been completed and await SEPA inspection. Where there have been issues with peat being used in restoration of steep road verges, peat has either been removed and other areas will be monitored. Paragraph 16 notes the delay in the conclusion of the Whiteley Wind Farm Restoration Guarantee Review due to a lack of joint agreement with South Lanarkshire and East Renfrewshire councils. Work on this will be prioritised either with other councils directly or with the developer, depending on whether agreement with other councils can be reached. Work in the restoration of Part B of the South West Interconnector project has continued, with work being carried out to a very high standard. At Part A, which is the Coylton to New Cumnock substation, restoration work is expected to recommence by the end of this year. At Part C, restoration has yet to commence, while SPEN undertake discussions with nearby wind farm developers with regard to the alternative reuse of stone, which would hopefully avoid the use of the Afton Road. Moving on to some photos of some of the sites. This shows Garland and shows where the removal of the peat cell has taken place and the land reformed, resoiled and reseeded. This shows the view across Garland Void, where there have been some geotechnical works on the wall closest to the camera here. These have been undertaken recently. This shows the area where the Grieve Hill peat cell has been removed and the land reformed. And this shows the Grieve Hill Void towards the SPA. You can see the works that have been done to the walls here. Moving on to Greenburn, this shows the Brayhead wetland area, and this area has continued to green up with various wildlife species being noted, and SEPA are content with this area now. And this is looking down towards the Daljig Void, where groundwater rebound levels continue to be monitored. And looking back towards the House of Water void, again, where viewbound levels are being monitored. And you can see the fencing and the works that have been done, the ditch works that have been done for safety purposes. This is moving on to South Kyle, and this shows the mitigation works that have been carried out to the culvert. You may remember from the last compliance report that there was a drop between the culvert and the riverbed, and this has been rectified, as you can see here. This shows some of the steep road verges where peat has been removed. There was a potential issue of peat spalling and breaking up along these areas, so the developer has tried to address that, and as noted in the report, other areas will continue to be monitored. This shows another steep verge where planting or reseeding has been taking place, which will help to bind the soil. This shows the construction of a new bridge over a water crossing. And this shows the restoration of sumps adjacent to the watercourse. And some additional trackside drains mitigation, which are to help filter the water running off the verges. This shows a turbine base which is ready for the turbine delivery. This is showing the restored borrow pit 4 in this area here. And this is showing a good example of the storage of turfs for reuse. This is showing where stored materials have been mixed, which is not considered good practice as it can hinder their reuse and restoration. This is a peat storage area. And this is an area of peat restoration at turbine 29. The electrical works at the site have been ongoing, and this is the installation of transformers at the substation and erection of the control building. And that concludes the presentation. So really just to conclude, there aren't any issues that have been noted which warrant any enforcement action being undertaken. So it's really just to note the content. If anybody's got any questions though, then feel free to ask.
Colleagues, Councillor Vinson.
It's Filson, Gordon.
Filson, sorry.
It's very,
I think I must have called you with 3 different things this morning.
I think my name's said correctly today. Anyway, Kerr, I think last time we spoke, you were mentioned about the wrong material that was put down in the road. I think it was South Kyle, and the lorry loads were going to come up through Dolmelton. Broome now, by the way, 100 lorry roads a day. If you're happy with that, you were in negotiations with them, I think.
Chair, I might defer to Barry on that, if you don't mind. Sorry, Barry.
To be honest, I'm not too sure about that either. So, what the wrong materials being?
Sorry, through you, Chair. I'm not sure what you mean by wrong materials.
There was a company, I think it was a road bridge, who's put in a road for the lights of the turbines, and it's the wrong material they've put down. They're not happy with it, sort of having to remove that, move it elsewhere. Some of the open cast were going to take some of it, but the rest of it to come up through Dolmelton, heading to the Spear Slack or something like that. I think it to go to a Grieve Hill. Remember we spoke about that?
Okay, Chair. The decommission of the access tracks for the interconnector project, yes, which there was the traffic management plan which had been approved for that, and that was one of the routes was via Gateside Road to up back onto the B741. I think Barry noted in our presentation that there's ongoing discussions with Spain about part of the site that would lead on to Afton Road. But I haven't had any sort of recent.
No, I think this was South Garland, and some of the spoil they were changing was going to go into the Chamerson site, but the rest of it had to come up through Wellington for some reason. No,
I'm not aware of those issues.
I must have picked you up wrong, maybe somewhere.
It was maybe within the South Kyle area, which is where the Southwest Interconnector is being restored, or the tracks are being restored. So rather than for the wind farm itself.
Yes, I think that's what it was, maybe.
Yeah, well,
there was some wrong material used, and they weren't happy with it, and they wanted it removed, and it was all going to come through Wellington, up Broome now.
There's maybe a couple of different things there. I think with the restoration of some of the bases for the pylons, there was an issue with the material being used, but that was all sort of dealt with internally. I think what you're referring to was the restoration of Part C, I think, and there was a traffic management plan for the removal of the stone, and that was taking stone from the 713 and through, maybe Kerr can help me with this, but it was taking it through Melington, and then the idea was to take it to Chamerston. And there was also a plan for stone to come through Afton Road as well. As far as I know, Spain, they haven't started restoration on that part yet, and they're in discussions with other wind farm developers potentially to reuse stone within the same area.
That must be the one we're talking about, I think. Right, thanks very much for that. Cheers.
Councillor Cook, thank you.
Thanks, Chair. It's in relation to Whiteley. I see there's no agreement between the other two councils in relation to the revised restoration plan. It says that the wording is the issue. Is it the wording, or is it the actual quantum that we're not in agreement with?
Paragraph 16. Paragraph 16. Right. Just to turn over to page 140.
Yeah, it's just at the top of page 140. Sorry.
The report, this is not something that I've been involved in, but it does say the bond wording, so I would assume that to be the wording and not necessarily the quantum.
Through you, Chair, if it helps, what we can do is we can clarify this, Councillor Cook, and certainly get back to you in the level of the detail, if it helps.
That'd be good, thanks. Good.
Anyone else?
Yeah, Councillor Bell.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Chair. It's actually in regards to Appendix 5, page 165, the Meadows and Cockleby. Can it just be confirmed that these are borrow pits and not actual full-time quarries? Thank you. And I know that the Meadows is ended. Thanks.
Yes, I can say that they are borrow pits which are being used for stone within the that area at Cockleby, and they're not. It's not. Stone isn't being extracted for use elsewhere.
Thank you.
No, if that's everyone, are we happy to note the report? Nobody otherwise minded? Okay, thank you. Lynn. The report.
Yep, thank you, Chair. It's been agreed to note the contents of the report, number of technical working groups, community liaison committees and compliance monitoring visits taking place for the period July to the end of September 2021. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. So next, and Mary, it's you again. We have an update report on progress of planning applications which have been recommended for approval, which are subject to the conclusion of an appropriate legal agreement and/or are legacy planning applications in East Ayrshire. That's pages 175 to 185 in your papers. Thank you, Mary.
Thanks, Chair. This report provides an update on applications which have been recommended for approval subject to a legal agreement but have not yet been determined 6 or more months following recommendation, and applications which remain undetermined after 1 year since their validation, which are termed legacy applications. In respect of the applications which are at legal agreement stage, as set out in Table 1 appended to the report, we have 9 applications which are subject to a legal agreement and are more than 6 months since approval was recommended. This is the same number as the last reporting period, with 3 dropping off and 3 added. One application in particular where progress has stalled is a residential planning permission in principle application at Stewarton Road in Fenwick. It was noted in the last report that the agreement had been concluded but not signed correctly by the applicant solicitors. Although that issue has now been resolved, a subsequent new issue with the Section 75 plans has now been noted and raised with the applicant. This issue was first raised with the applicant solicitor in August, and the council solicitors have been trying to progress matters by helping with the plan to be attached. However, there has been little or no response from the applicant solicitor. The last response to a previous email was sent in September, and members will appreciate that this Section 75 is very close to being registered, subject to these issues being resolved. And it is therefore regrettable if the application may have to be refused at this stage. However, if the matters are not satisfactorily resolved within the timescale stated, the application will be considered for refusal under delegated authority, subject to a reconsideration of the application and update of the consideration, as these issues cannot be kept ongoing indefinitely. The report also notes the Section 42 application at Garland Landfill site, which is likely to return to committee at some stage following discussions regarding the restoration quantum value and the revised restoration proposals. Table 2 of the report sets out applications which have been with the planning authority for more than a year since validation. As with the applications at legal agreement stage, the number has stayed the same at 13, but with 3 cases dropping off and 3 cases being added since the last report. Most of these cases are legacy cases due to legal agreement negotiations, which have resulted in the cases being more than a year old. Based on the actions proposed in Table 2, it is anticipated, however, that a number of the legacy cases will be resolved and can be removed from the list in the next report. And that concludes that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Questions? Councillor Pilson.
Thanks.
Apologies again.
Page 184, Mary there. See Bumpendale Mellington. Can you tell me what that application is at all?
Through you, Chair, that's the application we determined this morning.
Is that right?
Aye.
Okay, that's fine.
So it should probably move from Table 2 on the report the next time round, probably to Table 1, because it will then move to Section 75 applications to progress.
Thanks, Craig.
Anyone else? Nobody else? Okay. Councillor McFadden.
I wonder, is it possible to know what the issue is with the Stewarton Road thing? Is it a complicated matter that's holding it up, or?
No, it's not complicated. It's just a Section 75 agreement for the payment of a developer contribution. It's difficult to sort of pinpoint why it's been taking so long, but really we've been waiting on the applicants list coming back. But we are at a position where it's very close to being concluded and being able to be registered. So ideally we wouldn't want to refuse it, but it's taken so long. You know, any responses from their solicitors are taking an awful long time, and we are still getting problems with it. So that's really all it is.
So they're not disputing the amount or something like that, just procedural?
Yep, the Section 75 agreement's all been agreed. You know, that the wording of it and the amount has all been agreed. It's a pretty simple Section 75 agreement, but the actual conclusion and signing of it and the plans have been the problem, unfortunately.
So okay, Councillor McFadden?
Yes, thank you very much. That's fine. Thank you.
I believe David would like to come in. David?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I know you've all the long morning and I won't prolong it unnecessarily. It was just on that last point, it was just to reflect that, as we've advised before, and this is not making excuses, but as we've advised before, sometimes it's purely a commercial reason. If a developer gets a consent but decides for whatever reason, economic slump, business reasons, that they're not actually wanting to proceed with the development at a particular point in time, they don't generally then tend to keep paying professional planning and legal fees to get things agreed. What happens is they leave them in abeyance till they want them, and then they come and chap the door at the last minute to then get things finalised when they're ready to go. So the point being, it's not always about a disagreement on the content, as Vary's clearly explained. There isn't a disagreement on what we're trying to agree or a lapses agreement. They just don't need it just now because they're not actually at the point of being on site. And that sometimes is beyond, well, that scenario is beyond our control. We can be ready to sign an agreement, but if they've not actually got the appetite because they haven't got the need, because they're not actually intending to do that development in the near future, they often leave things because it's just not their priority. So sometimes the actions is beyond just what's on the table or in the draft agreement, and the reason for not progressing it is beyond the issues to be covered by the agreement. It's a broader commercial thing, and I think this is one of those, to be fair. It was just to add that. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, David. Does anyone else? Yeah, I saw Councillor Peel first.
Right. It's the tourist accommodation behind the Burnside cottages in Lugton. It says there that there was an issue raised by SEPA, and it has taken them some time to address that. Have they addressed it by now?
I'm not involved with that application. Right. Just looking at what's written here, I would say that the application prepared to go to September Planning Committee. However, last minute ownership issues were raised. It looks like it has been addressed, and now it's this ownership issue maybe that's been raised.
Through you, Chair, that is the case. It was due to come to the September Planning Committee, and as Barry said, which would suggest we therefore were in a position to deal with, and they'd agreed they dealt with the SEPA issues, but then other issues came up. I think third-party objectors raised issues about land ownership, etc., and for that reason, so it's been held back for a completely different reason from the one in the legacy report. But once that's been clarified, then it's otherwise ready to come back to Planning Committee.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Thanks, Chair. Just one last one for me. Page 181, Kerskia Caravan Park, housing development. Have the council heard back from the applicant solicitors?
I would take from what's written here that we haven't, and we're waiting on the applicant solicitors coming back.
Okay, folks, is that everyone?
Thanks, Chair.
Right, okay, then.
Councillor McFadden.
Oh, sorry, Councillor McFadden.
Could I, through you, Chair, could I just ask David Mitchell, just for a point of interest, if the planning application, passes before us and we grant planning, if the applicant then hangs around for ages and drags everything out, are they effectively extending their 3-year time period which they have to start the application? Does the 3-year time period only kick in once the Section 75s are signed, all other mitigating documents are signed, and is that why they do it? Even though they maybe don't want to do it now, are they actually also getting to extend their 3 years from the original date that the Planning Committee approved the application? Thank you.
Chair, if you don't mind, it's not my normal practice, but if I could maybe ask Barry or Craig, because I might just be slightly guessing at that one. I know what I think the answer is, but I don't want to be guessing. So if I could maybe ask either Craig or Barry just to confirm, if you don't mind.
Thank you, Chair. This has been subject of much case law in the past, but the case law has largely stated that the date of the grant of planning permission is the date that the decision notice is signed and issued, not the date of the committee decision to approve. Given that there can be delays in that process. So in answer to your question, Councillor McFadden, it's the date that the decision notice goes out the door, which might be 6 months, a year further down the line from the committee decision. And that's when the time limits would then start. For planning permission, it would be the normal would be essentially 3 years. There are slight differences to that if it's a planning permission of a limited duration, but normally it would be sort of 3 years, or with planning permission in principle, the norm would be 3 years to get your approval of reserved matters in from the date of the decision notice, and then 2 years thereafter to basically build the development where it's planning permission in principle. So as I say, the main date is the date that the decision notice goes out the door from the planning service, not the date of the committee decision.
And thanks, Chair. Just to add to that, Chair, that's obviously why then we've built in the mitigation measure of advising applicants 6 months to avoid unending drift. After 6 months, we reserve the right to bring it back to committee, report no progress, and revisit the original decision. So that's the control mechanism we have if developers are looking to leave things open-ended. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, David. Thank you, Craig. Councillor McFadden, did you want to come back?
No, just say thank you very much for the information. Thanks.
Okay, anyone else? Nope. Okay, folks, then in that case, we're asked to the recommendations. We note the content of the report. We note the recommended actions on each application subject to legal agreement over the 6 months target period, and we note the recommended actions on each legacy application. Are we happy to note the report? Yeah, nobody otherwise minded? Okay then, in that case, thank you very much. We have a decision to note.
Yep, thanks, Chair. The report is noted. Thank you.
Okay, folks, that's the conclusion of our agenda. Thank you very much. My apologies again to Drew. I'm going to start calling you Drew from now on. Okay, I don't know what's wrong with my eyesight, but you can call me Peter. And okay, thanks very much for everybody's for your attendance this morning. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.